Hello and welcome to those who are joining. We're going to take a minute or two to allow other folks to arrive, but we surely appreciate how promptly everyone else has arrived.
Amazing.
Let's
I'm
see.
just realizing I didn't put up my proper Zoom screen to twin with all of y'all, so I'll be bored. Oh
You're
no.
great. We're twinning enough. For those of you who can see us on this screen, Yen and I did not plan this, although we entirely welcome it. It's starting on a strong point of alignment.
Spring is sprung, so that's where pink
Yeah.
come into play. But yeah, while we're waiting for folks to pile in, we had a lovely 100 plus folks RSVP, so we'll give it a minute. But if you'd like to share where you're coming in from into the chat, hello from sunny Los Angeles. I would love to see where everybody else is clocking in from. We got somebody from Dallas. Amazing. Long Beach. Okay, you're close to me, Maura.
Omaha. That's incredible.
Buffalo. Okay, Salt Lake City. Amazing. I always love a virtual webinar. I see so many faces from places that I've never been.
I remember my last time in Buffalo, and it's interesting because people kept asking me, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I would come back in a heartbeat." I really enjoyed my time there. So, Nicole, I understand where your pride is coming from. And Caitlin, how are you feeling about start time? Do you think we're good to go? Buffalo is the friendliest, exactly. And we can get more of that. Enough as we can take of that these days. 100%.
Yeah, I think we're good to start. Nellie, thanks everyone for being here, and I'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. And hello, everyone. Thank you for making the time. We know time is an incredibly precious resource, and we're really excited to have you here today for a conversation that's both timely and some might agree overdue. In the name of alignment, I wanted to start our conversation today with a simple truth, which is that managers are the single biggest lever for engagement, performance, and retention. And yet, they're often the most undersupported group in our organizations. Research from Gallup has shown us that managers account for 70% of the variance in employee engagement. 70%. That's huge. And the problem that we're here to address and discuss is that while we all know how critical managers are, most organizations aren't yet, I'm a coach, so the power of yet is something I believe in, aren't yet fully set up to measure or support manager development consistently or as meaningfully as is needed to drive impact. And that's where 15.5 shines and why we're excited to offer this session today. We're talking about how HR can lead the way in building better people leaders. And we're talking about exactly how to do that, which is through a mix of human and AI enablement through coaching. So, human coaching, AI enablement, and we're not talking about more training for training's sake. Some of us may be on this call because of the sunk cost there, but we're talking about real, measurable, actionable support. So, to explore all of this together, we've brought together this lovely panel of two. My name is Nellie. My pronouns are she, her, and I bring a decade of experience with coaching and organization wide development programs to this conversation. I'm an ICF certified coach, a certified brain based coach, and a certified group coach with a background in consulting. And I love talking about all of the things related to the human side of manager development. And I'm really excited to be joined by Yen Tan today, manager of products at 15.5 and previously co-founder at Kona, which was acquired by 15.5 earlier this year. So I'm really excited for you all to hear from Yen today because Yen's been at the forefront of blending AI and manager enablement. And their work has quite impressively been featured in The Guardian, Fortune, Harvard Business School, and they've also led workshops at companies like MailChimp and Mercury. So here's a bit to what you all can expect from today. We'll kick things off with a conversation between Yen and myself about what it really takes to support managers in today's changing world. We'll share a few examples of how AI plus human coaching can drive real behavior change, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And a few quick notes on housekeeping before we dive in. The session is being recorded and we will send it out to you afterwards. As questions come up, as Caitlin mentioned, feel free to drop them in the chat or use the Zoom Q&A. We're going to hold time at the end to try to get to as many as we can. And we'll also be throwing a couple of polls along the way, which we'd love to hear from you on. So for our first poll, we'd love to hear from folks. How are you currently measuring or supporting manager effectiveness? And if you don't see an option that feels suitable to you, feel free to throw one in the chat.
So cool seeing the live stats coming
Yeah,
in.
absolutely. As a data nerd, I love seeing that roll in. Wow. And one of the things I'm really appreciating here is the wide variance in your responses. So I love to see that there's already some coaching going on. I love some people are naming, we don't have a formal process in place. We're looking to configure what that looks like for us. So wide variance in where we all stand, but what is shared ultimately is that there's a desire to fill the gaps. And at its core, that's what today is about. How do we better support the people who support everyone else? I don't have to tell you all on the line because I know you know this, the unsung heroes of all of our organizations, HR leaders carry so much. And it's hard to pull away from that sometimes and zoom in on how managers are also carrying a lot. And these managers, with all their caring, they do deserve better systems, smarter tools, and a more human centered approach to leadership. So, with that, I'm excited to dive in. And to do that, I'm really excited to pass things off to my colleague, Yen. So, Yen, turning it over to you.
Amazing. So you're probably all here because you're interested and curious about managers. You're following one of the larger trends facing the last 3 years post-pandemic that HR is facing. And so I'd love to table set with some trends first and speak to the fact that no, you're not crazy in how you're thinking about strategy and also the sheer priority that managers should be taking as far as your HR strategy goes. So let's dive in. First thing to know, HR is basically prioritizing manager enablement and development as the number one priority, taking over employee experience, any other types of things there, recruiting. It's all about manager development. And if you are here, most likely in your HR career in the last 3 years, you might have been told to do more with less. Manager development happens to be one of the key levers to pull when you are in do more with less territory. It's the best way to invest in talent and also scale what you're trying to do. And of course, as Nelly was indicating earlier, there is an outsized effect that managers have on the overall employee engagement. So a few stats here if you ever need to equip or defend why this needs to take priority. Companies with ineffective managers are 4.4 times less likely to actually have high-performing employees and teams. Like Nelly said earlier, 70% of the variance in employee engagement is attributable to that manager-direct report relationship, and 40% of costly employee turnover is attributed to the manager-direct report relationship as well. If you've ever heard the mantra, people leave managers, not companies, you have the numbers now to stand that up and prove it. Managers are clearly a costly threat to team performance, engagement, and retention. And of course, we can't place all the blame on managers themselves. We have quite a bit of struggles that the managers themselves are facing. As we saw from the poll itself, HR leaders are worried about their managers, and there's different types of resources or stages of readiness, I think, that we have at play here. So managers are extremely overwhelmed. They're often too busy, essentially, to be participating in training is often what we hear. And yet we need to upskill them and equip them yesterday, essentially. These managers are extremely overwhelmed, stuck in back-to-back meetings, stuck playing therapist or needing to have really crucial conversations. And unfortunately, a lot of leadership programs are simply not preparing managers for the future if they exist or they don't quite exist at all. This is not to place blame on anybody here. It's unfortunately the reality that learning sometimes takes a back seat when we're actively all trying to throw towards our OKRs and different types of goals there. Unfortunately, what that means is managers are consistently struggling with feedback, expectation setting, the ability to have difficult conversations, the ability to coach their employees and drive career growth. And if you've ever had the, oh my God, there was a surprise during performance review season, or oh my God, why did my manager say that to this direct report? You have possibly fell into this exact same trend that we're seeing globally at this point. Also, it's important to know that these overall types of programs are unfortunately also ironically struggling to get buy-in. And so we're noticing that because of this failed strategic business connection, or maybe a blurrier connection than maybe other programs that hit the bottom line better. HR leaders are left to guess what skills managers need to improve the most. Managers are rejecting generic training or failing to attend, failing to show up, and failing to participate. And as a result, these participation rates or the kind of blurry metrics there leave HR strategic leaders wondering whether or not manager training was worth the cost or unable to renew the cost that they're trying to do in their budget lines year in and year out. So it's a band-aid solution. If you've ever worked in learning, with learning, etc., a one-time training is definitely not going to solve your problems when it comes to manager development and upskilling overall. So all these problems, the trend section seems a lot less fun, sorry, but all these problems can definitely create this intimidation air, or at least this feeling of, oh my God, what now? What do I do to break the noise and also to deliver excellent training to my managers? Essentially asking the question, what's the best way to approach that? We're really hoping to tackle that in today's session and give you a roadmap, a tactical roadmap that you can use both with your 15.5 platform and also as you think about manager offerings and what you should be delivering, so you can make sure that you can create not only excellent manager experiences, but also build a business case over time that allows you to renew that budget over and over again and just continue to offer excellent resources to managers over time. So I tend to talk a little bit fast when I'm nervous, and I'm a little bit nervous. So I'm just going to pause right there and check for any questions and stuff. But again, as you have any questions, feel free to throw it into the chat. We'll be having an FAQ at the very end. Just want to make sure pacing is good. All right, so we're first going to be talking about how you actually diagnose and look into stats. Using your 15.5 platform, we highly recommend the Diagnose, Plan, Act framework. Essentially being able to use data, not just hunches or vibes or gut feelings, to diagnose key cohorts of the most important groups of managers that need help and what they need help in. Creating personalized plans so managers have a no-brainer excuse to be attending these learnings and actually upskilling themselves. And then finding a way to measure the ROI of your programs over time so you can prove the business outcome to every stakeholder involved who's questioning your budget line items at that dreaded kind of time of year. So that's going to be the overall action plan that we're hoping to equip you with in this webinar. We'll be starting with diagnosing the gap. This is all about finding the most important areas to focus on, and we'll be using, of course, the 15.5 platform to show you how to, like, where to look, essentially. We had one lovely HR person give us the feedback I heard last week, essentially. I love 15.5, but it can be painful to navigate the huge amounts of data that it's provided. So I'm really hoping that this creates like a little roadmap so you can know where to begin, essentially, with such a vast amount of information at your disposal. It's your strategic command center. If you even want to open up your 15.5 platform and be staring at it while I'm staring at it, we can hopefully follow through. I have a demo environment, so we're not outing anybody's important people data as we're going through and referencing this, but we'll be walking through the areas to look so you can figure out where to start diagnosing the gap. And I will switch screens in just a second. Give me 1 second to finagle that. Okay. Alrighty. And I think the thrilling portion here is that you might notice that if you have your 15.5 window open, some aspects of this are looking slightly different than yours. And it's a sneak peek on where we're going with manager effectiveness in our future updates as well. So if you're here, you're getting a sneak preview of what that'll look like in the future. We are definitely positioning the product to focus on manager effectiveness as much as possible, so you're able to get an instant readout. So this is both what exists today and what to look forward to in the very, very near future. Exciting. And if you want to learn more, by the way, we have a actual webinar on the 20th that will dive into the full launch of all of these awesome features here. So the first thing that you want to do is know that this is your HR outcomes dashboard. This is a wealth of information for measuring and visualizing manager effectiveness and just people data as a whole. Typically, we have our performance reviews as engagement surveys and turnover data. You also have a separate window for MEI, Manager Effectiveness Indicator, a score essentially for how your managers are doing. You might have noticed in this view here, we've actually moved manager effectiveness towards a new tab over here. We'll be explaining a little bit more over time. But if I'm looking at this, the first place I want to go is essentially the filter right here. So at the top, you can filter by different types of segments. We want to filter by different hierarchies or groups, different types of departments, maybe by tenure, by demographic data, to start to figure out different cohorts. I call this turning hunches into data. And so this is where if you have an HRBP on staff or you have been observing or having conversations with certain department heads, really start to validate where the data looks. And this little filter, these filters up top, are a great place to start looking. So if you have already heard from a product leader and engineering leader, hey, it really feels like folks are disengaged or it seems like the leaders there are not giving feedback or not having goal setting conversations in a proper way. If you have had recent diagnostic events such as reviews or engagement surveys, and you want to see a holistic kind of view overhead, go there first and start to filter essentially by those managers to see if you can validate your hunches in that way. We can also, of course, dive into the individual types of views here. So if I go to the side here, we can look into our engagement survey, and you can see certain AI slash, we have the predictive impact score essentially. So you can go through and it's already started to pull out key areas from your last engagement survey. That's a great place to start looking when you're trying to understand what different folks might need to focus on. And again, that filter is there so you can diagnose per cohort. Maybe you have a hunch that, again, product engineering leaders are struggling with meaning. I can filter down by that and essentially be looking at these areas to improve or areas to celebrate to see what type of metrics might need to move. I really want numbers associated with that so that when I do invest in managers and in those specific cohorts, I know where we started and I know where point B is, essentially where we're going to go in a short period of time to make the business case as to whether or not we've moved the needle. I also want to dive into the performance reviews, of course, as well. Performance review tab, you're able to go through and look through company results. This is a little bit more for the qualitative edge. As I'm reading through different types of summaries on different company results, I can both have numbers and also an idea essentially on where folks are doing. Now I want to show you what is coming and what to look forward to because, of course, at the current moment, there is a lot of going through the platform, exploring different nooks and crannies to create a holistic picture. And what's coming up soon is a wider view of manager effectiveness, so you can actually have this summarized for you. Hopefully, y'all are excited. I've been really excited for this feature. The idea being that we can look at individual managers, see insights on what they're actually struggling on across and by referencing through the entire 15.5 platform and see the urgency with which somebody might need that. So Leora here has high urgency and the need to improve on feedback recognition and difficult conversations. If I dive in a little bit deeper, I can see a lot of flags here on where this information was coming from and understand essentially why this was flagged to me. So a really great way for me to dive in and see at a high level. This is coming very soon. So we're very excited for y'all to be able to essentially create cohorts here. And of course, I can go through and select essentially what different folks need. So then I can sort by folks with low performance, low engagement, people who are new tenure managers are definitely a major target for development programs. So hopefully this gives you an idea of where to begin to grab a lot of data in your platform. If I were in the shoes of any strategic HR leader, where I would, oh, actually, Bridget, I can answer your question really quickly and then get to what I was saying. The different inputs, it really depends on what type of diagnostic events you have available, but anything from a latest manager effectiveness survey, your best self reviews, engagement surveys, and also the manager tenure, any sort of turnover, pretty much a lot of the variables we have in the 15.5 platform become the sources for this AI site. So, as I was saying, if I was in the shoes of any strategic HR person right now, what I'd be doing is first creating, basically writing out my hypotheses of hunches I have about the organization today. And really, basically, that's my gut assumption. And then looking through the different areas that we've just mapped out here so you can actually create and map out the data towards the hunches that you have. So I have a slide here to essentially cover what we just went through, apply filters to locate different demographics, look through manager effectiveness. There is the MEI tab right now, that's the manager effectiveness indicator, and you can see survey results and raw data in that view. Coming soon, of course, the AI insights will make that a lot easier. We have the Engage platform for looking through your latest engagement survey and best self reviews for looking through more qualitative data. We really want to just gather up as much as possible. So then we have cohorts that we can start to explore. Amazing. I was yapping for quite a while there. Hopefully that was helpful to somebody. And we'll be going into next designing your plan and figuring out what's best for your organization. Take it away, Nellie.
Thank you so much there. Yeah, and I love all the information that you shared there because part of our objective in these sessions is not just to support your enablement of the platform, but also to support your internal conversations. We know that a lot of folks on who are engaging in this work are up against buy-in, the buy-in roadblocks that we have with several stakeholders that are involved in enabling these programs. So we really hope that these resources can be beneficial to you, that you take the recording, that you use it to map out those conversations. Now that we've talked about diagnosing, we want to transition into once we've done those diagnostics and we have the information readily available to us, how can we move forward? And this is where I'd love to talk about our manager enablement stack. So, one of the things to consider, the first piece to consider is setting a foundation for our best practices. So, this can look like do it yourself trainings or group cohorts for trainings. And for those of you who are thinking to yourself, I've tried the trainings, I'm training exhausted, there's actually research to back why the trainings aren't always most supportive standalone. And what the research states is that training standalone can create a 20% shift in behavior change. And one of the reasons that I think it comes down to 20% that was listed is because people often work best with information when it's presented at the time of need. And so, how do we make this information relevant? That's where we transition to giving managers one on one coaching or group coaching. And in these group coaching conversations, the statistics show that's where we jump not just from 20 to 40, but we jump from 20 to 80% in improvement. And that's because in the coaching environment, this is where mindset shifts are actually created, where behavior change can be defined, and where transformation meets accountability. So, the coaching container, I can't overstate just how beneficial it is to driving that change. And that coaching container can take, as we said, a human approach as well as to an AI informed approach. And we'll share more about that later. And we also want to create self serve resources. As I mentioned, making those pieces available so that people can revisit it at the point of need is really what we're going to see have a jump in adoption of the tools available to us. And again, that enablement with AI, the personalized 24/7 support and workflow that can be achieved through Kona. So at 15.5, if you've been working with us for a while, you're not a stranger to the fact that things change and develop. And that's because at this organization, we are absolutely obsessed with providing you all with the most up-to-date resources available to drive this work. And we're learning information all the time through the data that you even input into what drives those change. So this is part of how we've landed at this enablement stack and this offering, this configuration of resources for you. So this is what is available. You might be thinking to yourself, how can I decide what's best for my organization? And there are a couple of approaches to that. One approach that I'll name is, as I mentioned, these resources that are available through 15.5. We have a content library. And one thing I'll name about our content library is that we have full-length courses for people. As Yen mentioned, sometimes we have people on the front end, they're newer to manager development. And for those, we might want to leverage our full form coaching. And then we have folks who know these practices, but we haven't seen them put it into practice. I would call that the transition from declarative knowledge to procedural knowledge. And that's where we also have micro learnings available that are just 15-minute refreshers on the core leadership skills that people need to be exemplifying in their work. We can then pair that with group and one-on-one coaching. And the group and one-on-one coaching can take how you're determined that can take a lot of different forms. I'll talk through some questions that can support you in that, but it's really based on the data. Who are we trying to target and what's the best way to do? Do we need to have people in settings where they can hear from their peers and, because no two brains are the same, really grow from that osmosis of different approaches? Or are we learning from our data that there are unique departments that need specified support? And I want to be really clear here. It's super important to me to clarify that support doesn't always come in the form that someone's failing. It doesn't mean that someone necessarily has a manager gap. Sometimes we may know that we're going to put a certain department over duress. We know that they have big objectives that are critical to the business, and we need to offer that support. Perhaps we've advanced them because of the promise that they've shown in their work, and we want to be able to support them in creating a successful transition. That is also a great use case for group and one-on-one coaching. And then, of course, we have Kona, the AI coach. And Kona can support with coaching recommendations that people can leverage standalone, or they can factor that into their group and one-on-one coaching as well. Here's what I'm having in terms of the coaching recommendations that are made to me. How can I implement that and flesh that out a bit further? You do see this promise in the headline, go from zero to world-class manager program in only 1 week. We want to be clear, it can be stood up in 1 week if that's what your organization needed yesterday. However, it does not mean that we will be rushing through the process to set it up in 1 week. We are very glad, and all the coaches, I can speak on behalf of my team, we're very glad to have consultative conversations that can help you determine, based on the data that I'm seeing, what is the best way to allocate coaching content or Kona to the targeted demographics that I've identified. So that process can take as long as you'd like it to, and we can support you in going back and forth as you're engaging buy-in. Or if you want to switch it on very quickly, that's also an option available to you, especially through the accelerated Kona offering. So I did mention that there are some questions we might want to ask ourselves in determining how can I configure this design for that is bespoke to my organization, because we are certainly, I hope it's clear at this point that we're not advocating any sort of plug and play offerings. So asking yourself, do we need teaching? Do we need coaching? What's missing? Are we missing knowledge? Are we missing skill? Are we missing will, confidence, or commitment that can help us to determine the first approach we want to take? Because for some folks, they will have what I call affiliate-based coaching, which is coaching that is affiliated with the content that they've watched. But I also want to make clear that if you have a demographic that it isn't a matter of skill, it is a matter of will, and you don't want to pair it with the content, that is an available offering as well. Then we might want to consider whose growth will have an outsized impact on the business right now. And it was really careful framing of this question to make sure that it's reiterating the point that I was made before. Sometimes there are gaps that we need to fill, but sometimes there are people who are going to have an outsized impact on the business right now that we need to support. And then how quickly can we make an impact that makes a difference, right? What is our timeline for this? Making sure that we're avoiding action bias, but also knowing what our deadlines are. What are our dates that we want to be able to revisit the data and determine how we might want to amend the program based on what we are learning. And of course, one of the best ways to do that, as I mentioned, is validating with data, as Yen mentioned before. So I'll pass it back to them to continue on from here.
Amazing. If folks need any repeating points, by the way, towards the end, I can repeat anything or go over certain slides, but we're going to be moving on to action and acting on needs based off of data. So once you've been able to essentially understand and diagnose some of the problems at your organization or areas of opportunity and growth, you can then go through and try to figure out tailored plans. We're really big on tailored plans. As somebody who's worked with and for L&D for the last 5 years, when managers feel like they were an afterthought for a program and that this program was just convenient to stand up, they'll often check out or not even participate in these types of programs. So we really want to make sure that it feels tailored to them. And there's a way to do that without breaking your schedule or your budget. And so we can talk through that as well. High level, we want to first figure out what our hunch is and really get that on the page. Right here, I have a very neat kind of analysis that will be available later on in the 15.5 platform, but you can also, of course, do this manually, looking at your 15.5 data if you, of course, can't wait for this to be released. We want to know who's highest at risk, who's maybe more medium risk. Overall, what is this kind of group dealing with? Here, I've a fictional kind of scenario here. We have a sales and marketing org that are facing issues with goal setting and accountability. It's evident across multiple self-reviews. It's evident maybe in their engagement scores as well. And we know that there is a difficulty to prioritize. This team is burning out because they're basically tackling everything and not having a clear vision in place. With this sort of thing, we want to make sure that we give them a choosing of the 4-part offering there that really addresses this problem best. So in this instance, we'd recommend group and one-on-one coaching, some level of kind of group coaching to make sure that we have a shared language, and maybe one-on-one coaching for some of the more advanced players inside this cohort, so they're able to get detailed advice on maybe what's blocking vision setting for their organization. And then an AI coach named Kona that can essentially reinforce steps there. You can, of course, do this manually, and it will take time to, of course, resource and set out and find all these things. Or you can go through the manager product suite that we have here and, again, stand it up quite quickly. And so we would have a pairing here that is not just a detailed plan, but a plan that works in concurrence with one another so that any sort of things discussed inside the group coaching setting there can be reinforced by this AI coach. We've been talking a lot about the AI coach. I have a full demo in just this hot second, so we can go through exactly what that entails. But the idea is that they would get all the time kind of nudges as well as detailed kind of the human accountability side to move the needle on this kind of group area. I want to let Nellie talk really quick about the group offering here, if you're down, Nellie.
Yes, absolutely. Let me close out the chat here and take a look. Oh, absolutely. So this is speaking more into the group plus one-on-one manager coaching. So this again is taking us back to the human side. And as I mentioned, this is intended to be bespoke. So we're connecting it to your business needs through those consultative conversations so that you all are sharing with us, here's the data that we're seeing, or here's what we have upcoming in our organization. Other lenses that I've seen organizations take is we're updating our values, or we need everyone to get on board with this mantra in terms of a new way of working. And so that's one of the ways that we really make sure that we connect it to your business needs. I often have conversations with HR leaders who have said, we have this change happening in real real time, and we have the capacity to change the learning journey as well as to integrate any frames that would best benefit the organization during that group or one-on-one coaching. It is often based on data. So in the example where you might be teeing someone up for one-on-one coaching, we have it embedded in the action plan that you can give someone context and afford them context as to why they're in coaching. So they're not just there sitting wondering, how did I land here? Am I in trouble? Absolutely not. Here are some of the targeted growth areas, and also this space is for you. So are there any additional growth areas that you would like to add to that? In the group coaching container, one of the reasons that one might opt for that, again, is the breaking down of silos, creating stronger relationships across divisions or even intra-communally within a group. And then we're making sure that these conversations are action focused. Absolutely. Sometimes we need to explore where is the breakdown in value. We need to make sure we're slowing down to create that mindset shift. But then the question becomes, now that we have new clarity, and now that we have these insights, how are we going to translate that into action in service of myself or my team? And all of the coaches on the 15-5 team, I'm happy to share with you, are 15-5, or they've been with 15-5 for several years, and they're all ICF certified coaches. We've been spending much time with the content library. In fact, you'll see many of the coaches' faces in the content library. This has been developed in-house. And so we spend a lot of time thinking specifically about the resources that are offered to you all through the content library. And oh, I'm seeing a question. Can you please repeat your example of coaching connected to company values? Absolutely. I will try to think of a more company specific example without naming any names. There's one organization that has a value of community that was being leveraged in a way that perhaps was unproductive. You're my community, so I need you to take on this work. And the CEO of that organization had expressed to me that it was really important that everyone understands that their job isn't finished until everyone else's job is easier. And so one of the ways that we can bring this into the coaching session is we can bring it on the front end or on the back end based on the discussion that we've had today. How do you think this ties back to living this company value in a truer way, or in a way that's specific to your team needs? So that's just one of the ways that we can use values as a frame for coaching. We have content as a frame, but again, if we choose to go without content, or if we want to layer on additional lenses, we have a practice of creating what is called success outcomes. That's an optional practice too, if you feel that it would serve the program. So the success outcomes are, we have our individual development goals, but what is success in terms of us as a leadership group for this organization? And that's often where we'll bring the values as a lens into the group coaching container.
The values example is actually a perfect example also to show how a human coach and an AI coach can work together to reinforce that over time, not just in the live kind of coaching session, but also as they're operating through Slack, Zoom, and Google Meet. So that's a perfect transition into the Kona side of things as well. We're thrilled to announce this new offering. Kona was previously our startup, and it got acquired in January of this year. And so Kona is an AI assistant at Coach that's paired with the 15-5 platform, operating all of that great data and in workflow to make sure that it's reinforcing nudges essentially to push managers gently towards their learning goals, and for the awesome discussions that they might have with Nelly and the Transform coaching team essentially. So the way it works is Kona is joining one-on-ones via Zoom and Google Meet. We have a number of privacy features I'll touch in a sec, but believe it or not, managers are really cool with that because they're getting awesome meeting notes in their Slack and email after the meeting's done. Direct reports and managers alike really love having this source of truth just to make sure that they're able to have that documentation. And of course, it lives in 15.5 to later inform performance review drafting and awesome AI features at that front as well. Then, of course, once the meeting notes come in, they're also getting coaching tips essentially right in Slack, email, and the 15.5 platform. So they know how they did essentially based off of that actual meeting. If we have the community example at play here, and that is essentially one of the things that Kona should be looking out for, if there is a discussion about goals and community is logged as one of the values, Kona can tell the manager essentially whether they were actively living by values or maybe not quite showing up for their teams in the way that they should be. So there's a number of awesome use cases to show off here, both for preparing managers for important conversations, making sure they always feel prepped, even if they have to give some tough feedback, automating manager documentation overall, and seeing patterns and awesome insights from the coaching materials themselves. I have some views in just a sec, Warren. I'll switch screens and stuff so you can see what Kona actually looks like live. But there's a number of awesome things that we are hearing from managers already. It's saving them 1.5 hours per teammate per week just on the documentation front. They're spending 75% less time writing reviews from scratch, mostly staring at a blank page at that. And over 86% would recommend it, so much so that they're cursing off the rooftops that this is really cool. Holy, this was impressive. Kona generated a recap 5 minutes in. My direct reports really loved it. Highly recommend you should use it if you haven't already. Pretty exciting stuff. We have a number of privacy considerations to make it safe for managers to use as well. That's the biggest question we get. Transcripts are only used for AI assistants, never shared with anybody. What happens in the meeting stays in that meeting, and we know psychological safety is a major thing to preserve. The coaching also stays private, but all participants can not only ask Kona to pause or leave, but also get kind of the notes. And as an HR leader, you actually get aggregate stats based off of how things are going. I can find my example there in just a second, but I'll switch screens really quick if that's all right with folks to show you what it looks like. Just gonna grab sorry, 1 second. Okay, actually, the example I have is an actual customer, so I'm not going to do that, but I can show you the amazing stats that we are getting from Kona itself, as well as what it looks like in Slack. I'll start with Slack. Overall, this is what the experience looks like. It's very easy to set up your Kona screen. Essentially, once we launch it, it goes straight into Slack under the 15.5 app, and they can essentially see the coaching right in Slack, as well as a link out to the notes that live in 15.5. I have a live example actually here where I was giving feedback to my teammate Abby, and it basically said, "Great job providing feedback. However, it's important to maintain clear examples and set measurable goals." For context, I ran into that meeting was like, "Abby, great job. Could be delivered faster, but no big deal. Okay, bye." And got nervous, of course, which happens to quite a few managers. And Kona will call out essentially what it notices there to make sure we actually help the managers improve as we're going. So it's not going to work alone. We never think that AI coaching can do it all, but paired with the human element and also the library that we have on hand, it's a very powerful offering for managers. And over time, you essentially get anonymized insights as well. We can view that here with my sample information here of basically high level, a report card for the managers, and also an anonymized report card on the department as a whole on what's going well, areas to improve, and over 18 different types of stats that essentially behaviors Kona is looking out for to make sure managers are making progress on these different areas. So pretty exciting stuff, but I get ahead of myself. I want to make sure that we have time for the Q&A overall because we've covered a lot of ground and also have a call out for some of the other places you can learn about these awesome offerings. I was supposed to put up a poll. Okay. So we have a poll for you. If you'd like a personalized demo of Kona, please raise your hand and we can definitely help out there. Otherwise, we're happy to open up for a Q&A and essentially answer any questions you might be having or any sort of, yeah, feel free to share what you'd like to share. Keeping in mind that this is recorded, if there are more sensitive things that need to be shared, we can definitely take it off of the webinar and chat about that too.
I can fill in some space here with a personal example while folks are coming up with questions. It has been really impactful. I have an extremely transparent leader, super grateful for them. And it was after our last one-on-one, we went through all of the work and he got his feedback from Kona and reached out and said, "Oh my gosh, Kona just let me know that I did not give you a deadline for that. And you're completely swamped. Do you need any resource support?" Things along those lines. I've found it as an accelerator with recaps, but I even independently have already used an AI plus coaching approach in my personal life. I do have a coach, right? Great coaches have coach. And I remember having a conversation with AI about mindset shifts that would be needed to achieve some personal goals. And it was incredible what AI was able to spit out. And then I was able to take that into my one-on-one with my coach and say, "Here's one thing that all of this spit out. It resonated, all of these mindsets resonated with me, except for this one. This is where I'm stuck. Can you support me?" Oftentimes, when managers are overwhelmed, they have a hard time naming specifically what it is that they're overwhelmed about and where they need support. And Kona can be a credible tool in helping them to identify and diagnose the specific support they need so that with that root cause analysis, they can actually ensure that they're solving the right problems. So, as someone who has spent her entire career absolutely obsessed with the human side of coaching, I'm really excited about what this AI pairing can do to accelerate the outcomes and the behavior changes that we entered a coaching space to achieve.
I love that anecdote, Nellie. And I didn't know that, so that's really cool. Amazing. Does anybody want to come off mute to ask a question? Yeah, Maura, please. I also might be butchering your name, apologies, so let me know.
No, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. You said the privacy settings, you did sort of the slide about that. Obviously, it's documenting in a way that Gemini or Copilot or any of the rest of them are listening and documenting and summarizing, which is fantastic. And we have just integrated in our company the use of Gemini for client meetings. So it's been really good. But there's always, even though you said you can ask Kona to pause, stop recording, whatever, what happens to that transcript? I know you just shared a screen where it said private to you. After the data is mined from the information, where does that archive or file? And I worry about that, obviously, because we live in a litigious, for protective reasonings, which is very important, right? We have to protect ourselves as managers, as companies, and as employees too, right? All directions. So then where is it archived? How does that work?
Yeah, I can quickly answer the kind of like data privacy element and then also show you what it shows up as. So first off, for the litigious environment aspect, definitely understand. And having everything documented can be quite scary should anything bad happen in that front. One thing, all transcripts are temporarily stored. So after 30 days, they're gone to the wind forever. Audio, visual, completely erased the moment that the meeting ends. The only reason we hold and encrypt at rest and in transit those transcripts is in case the AI coaching needs to be rerun for whatever reason, or you have a different type of metric that you're looking for. Once it's gone, it's really gone forever. And we do need the original transcripts to make sure we have all those awesome AI insights. So we can also talk about a deletion policy that works org specifically and stuff. We have different folks potentially requesting different things, so there's flexibility there. And we take very seriously that nobody's meant to see those transcripts. The only thing that's relevant are the notes, which are editable, by the way. And so
Okay.
yeah, in the
Great.
55 app, if a name gets wrong, sometimes Kona misspells its own name as Conan for whatever reason. That can happen. We can make that fully editable. You can also delete things that you forgot to pause, essentially, from the bullet point transcript as well. So those are just some of the many privacy features we have.
But ultimately, though, those notes are owned by the account holder of Kona and 15.5, which would be the company, right? It would be.
Sorry, I think I got a little lost there. And the notes themselves are only visible to the meeting participants, and they would be inside the like one-on-one page, basically where that one-on-one page that managers and direct reports can reference, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. So they will, but my point is that they will exist in time. They'll get documented, noted, stay in the 15.5 one-on-one folder for all intents and purposes. The transcript disappears after the notes have been pulled from it. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. But the notes are always going to exist and they're always going to be the property of the 15.5 account holder, ultimately, which is the company. Is that true?
So, yeah.
Okay. I think it's great. I think there's still reticence to, especially if one-on-ones, if we're using them as managers to garner empathy, to really get trust. I think it's good. It's better than I'm going to turn Gemini on. And I think it's better because it's built with that in mind. So it's a definite step in the right direction. And I think it could help. I think the specificity is the best part. Like you have all these talks and then you get overwhelmed. You get overwhelmed because you get overwhelmed in your regular job. And then 6 weeks later, somebody says, remember when you said we were going to implement XYZ? And you don't remember saying that ever. So that part's great.
I can share that we've been using Kona in-house. And there was an adjustment period for myself as to feeling like, is someone in the room, big brother, what have you,
Yeah.
right? In the room with us. And it was actually surprising to me how quickly I was able to make that leap of comfort of just Kona pause or Kona leave. And knowing that I have autonomy and my leader also has autonomy, it's a shared autonomy. One could say Kona pause. Even if I want to spend 10 minutes talking to my manager about what they did that weekend, right? Like muddy up the data, Kona pause. And then when we're ready to talk business, we'll reintegrate from there.
That's great. Thank you so much for that clarification.
Of course.
We're technically at time, but if somebody has an additional question, I'm down to hang around for another 5. Thank you so much for attending our webinar and participating and figuring out how to support managers. Your managers, I'm sure, thank you. Amazing.
Thank you all so much for taking the time. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Laura, do you have another one?
Oh.
I was looking for the applause button for you.
Oh.
You're
Appreciate
wonderful.
it.
I should be applauding all of you. It's no secret how much you all have on your plates, and taking the time to explore the best offering for your organization is such an act of care. So I really do truly mean it when I say thank you all for being here with us. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone. See you in the next one.